What is up, man? It is what has been like a good 3 months. Season 1 ended in May. Currently is July the 24th. Oh, just for anybody who's been wondering, I've had a bit of a hard time over the past couple months. Had a kid in the hospital for some time. He had surgery, yada yada. Just getting caught up to speed. No excuse. Promise to do better. It's a long road ahead of me, or pretty much everything. But what I am doing right now is recording the first official episode of season 2 of the podcast. So I'm breaking it down into seasons. So just give you that. So I'm breaking it down into seasons. I don't know how many seasons it would actually be, but I currently am breaking it down into seasons. As season 1 ended in May, I took a little bit of a break for a couple months. Personal reasons, alright, it's something that happens. It's a little break for a couple months. I'm back on it, every Friday, every Saturday, with a bit of additional content added in there just for like extra kicks, you know what I'm saying? So, just something that's anybody interested in that can definitely get that, can definitely be looking forward to that. Another thing, I'm back on the Patreon thing. I don't know how many people want to support me, but I'll still leave the links in the description below, just in case anybody does, in turn, want to support your boy in the best way possible. It's through Patreon. Any donations do count, do matter. I mean, do count. I will fix the tier list. I don't have much right now because just starting out. I'm taking my glass off because this glare is actually killing me. Oh, having these lights on, these glares. Oh, nice. Anywho, today's episode is the first of season 2, as I just said. So what we're going to be covering is something that I've read up on quite a lot over the past couple of weeks recently, and it is the Willie Lynch letter on how to make a slave. Now, you may be wondering, why am I reading something or even discussing something from the 1700s, specifically 1712? That is because this letter alone holds the key to majority of the nature of the current black people. And when you read it and you look at it and you look what happened since then, you look at 100 years later in 1812, you look at 100 years after that in 1912, and then 2012, and you look currently in 2019, and you see that it's still there. All of this that was implemented back in 1712, 400 years ago, 300, give or take 300 years ago. Yeah, I got to get my brain straight. 300 years ago, roughly, it's still in place, and it's still something that majorly impacts us all today. And it's not something that I'm trying to beat into your brain or trying to get you to despise white people, but it's something that everybody around the world needs to understand, especially the black people, because this is a mode to not only destroy oneself image, but to actually destroy everything about that person. It doesn't matter who you are, who you think you are, because this is exactly what has happened. And once I get to the end of this, I hope everybody understands why, at this point, everybody does what they do. Just, it's not going to be a clear understanding of where everybody does what they do, but definitely it's going to be a different perspective, if I could say, if I say so myself. And I'm not going to kind of stress over it a little bit, kind of move myself up here. For the remainder of season 2, I'm going to actually be on this little screen up here, just so you can actually see what I'm seeing and more clear. I'm not all prevalent up there, because this is pretty much just be audio anyway. So 3 topics that we're going to cover today. So what we're covering is the Willie Lynch theory and how to make a slave. The basis of this is basically using human nature, slave nature in particular, to understand what it is, you know, how to make a slave. Because an enslaved person is just one who has no self-control, no control over their environment, and is currently enslaved to another person, to another group of people, or a person's group of people, whatever. So they using this theory, they were able to distinguish two things. One, that the key to breaking the Negro people, the black people, as they would call us Negro people, is through the mother, the father, and the infant. Two, they did this by using a combination of the basic principles of breaking a horse into the stable with a few sustaining factors. Now, yes, if you're thinking it and you're getting triggered, they did compare black people to horses. Black people, horses. That's how they viewed us. They've always viewed us as animals. And this just kind of further proves it. But before we get into it, I'm going to tell you a few touching points of the conversation for today. We're going to talk about the cardinal principles for making a Negro. Paragraph in there, just going to summarize it up, see what it is, talk about it. The process of breaking the African woman, and the controlling language that they used to inevitably enslave us all. It's a process. It was never something that was done in one take. It was never something that was, boom, you're a slave. You know, wave of a wand and flick of the wrist type shit. So it's not one of those instances. It took time, it took practice, it took an absurd amount of disturbing things to enslave the African people. And nobody ever touched on it. Everybody touched on the basics. Yeah, strongest black man, prison mentality, blah, 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 beat his ass. But we actually going to get a little bit further and deeper into it. So, again, don't want to sit there and patronize you. Don't want to sit there, you know, make it feel like I'm bothering you. But again, if you really, really are enjoying this content, and I'm going to be pumping out a lot more content going into the rest of 2019 and early 2020, please think about supporting me on Patreon. Links going to be in the description below. They also give me a subscribe, share the video, like it, comment on it, let your friends know what I'm doing here, man. Because if you want to get involved, I'll leave the Discord link in the description. If you have Discord, if you don't, it's a free app. Download it, sign up, and join the conversation. That's all I'm going to say. So with that, let's get right into it. So, put my glasses back on. Reading glasses. Sound old as hell. Let me get my reading glasses on. Shit. Alright. The Willie Lynch letter, The Making of a Slave. As you know, well, as most of you would not know, this speech was delivered by Willie Lynch on the bank of the James River in the colony of Virginia in 1712. Lynch was a British slave owner in the West Indies. He was invited to the colony of Virginia in 1712 to teach his methods of slave owners there. The word lynching is derived from his last name. If you didn't know that, it's actually where it came from. So when I see the word lynch, it's automatic trigger for me because of things that have happened in the past, so just personal note. So, skipping past the boring stuff, pretty much it's like him greeting these people, telling them you shouldn't kill, you know, black people because that's wasting your stock and it's bad for the economy. We move on to what it is. So, he has a few things that he does do, and it does indicate on what it does. See, look, 300 years. I want to just put it this. Gentlemen, you know, just kind of give you a basis of what this was. This is in 1712. This is 300 years ago. I do not need to, gentlemen, you know what your problems are. I do not need to elaborate. I am not here to enumerate your problems. I am here to introduce to you a method of solving them. In my bag here, I have foolproof. I have a foolproof method of controlling your black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that I install, if installed correctly, the slaves for at least 300 years. I guarantee every one of you that if installed correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. 300. Also goes on to say that he has methods of work, and these methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. Take this simple little list of differences and think about them. At the top of his list was age, but is there only because it starts with an A. Go figure. The second is the color or shade. There is intelligence. There is intelligence, size, sex, size of plantation, and status on plantation, attitude of owners, whether the slave lives in the valley or on the hill, east, west, north, south, have fine hair, coarse hair, or tall or short. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall go and outline each action, but before that I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than trust, and envy stronger than adoration, respect, and admiration. The black slaves, after receiving an indoctrination, shall carry on and will become self-refueling and self-generating for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Don't forget, you must pitch the old black male versus the young black male, and the young black male against the old black male. You must use the dark-skinned slaves versus the light-skinned slaves, and the light-skinned slaves versus the dark-skinned slaves. You must use the female versus the male, and the male versus the female. You must also have you white servants and overseers distrust all blacks. It is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect, and trust only us. So, dissecting that, just simply dissecting that. First 3 paragraphs of this open letter. You have things that have often been utilized to send the black community into a perpetual downfall. The first thing is pitching the old black man versus the young black man. Something that you can see obviously throughout, the past 100 years. As you see that there's a discourse and disconnect between young black men and older black men. Reason is, older black men have gone through it. They've witnessed it. They are wiser and more prevalent. They want to be more prevalent in the community. So they feel as though they need to step up and make changes for this community in the way that they see fit, in the way that they've done it in the past. Well, you have the younger black man who thinks in a whole different way. Whereas older black men would rally together, they would protest, they would get together, they would march, and there's a whole multitude of other different things that they would do. The younger black man feels as though marching, parading around through the streets of every major town or city, or marching to Washington to sit up there and deliver a speech, that is a thing of the past. Not being disrespectful, well, totally respecting the fact that the older generation did all of these things, they still feel as though that is not the right way to go. So they take a more extravagant approach. And most of it comes from just self-preservation. Now, what that means is you see a lack of younger black men trying to support and uplift like his community and his environment versus the older black man. So I'm not saying that there's none that actually do. I'm saying it's very far and few that it kind of undermines the whole purpose of it, and that generally is because we're trying to preserve ourselves. Self-preservation is the name of the game, and it's something that young black men try to exceed in, because it's very hard out here for everybody. But as a young black man, only thing you can see is I have X, Y, and Z things to go by. So X, Y, and Z is the reason I'm living, and I will continue to live and pretty much do as I see fit to get to where I need to be. Not trying to build the community, not trying to save the community, but trying to save themselves and build themselves up, with no regards of anybody else. That's where the disconnect comes in. You have one for the community, and one who is for themselves and their offspring and their people, the people they fuck with. So it's not like a general thing where everybody's trying to get in with each other. Excuse me, 6 o'clock, boy. I just woke up. Everybody's not trying to help each other out. They're trying to help themselves out. Second part of that is the dark-skinned slaves versus the light-skinned slaves. Now, although we are not physically enslaved, now keep that in mind, we're not physically enslaved. This is still a process and a method that has been used for generations to destroy the black community utterly. And when you look at it now, we still have this conversation of dark skins versus light skins, where we have X amount of reasons to go with a dark skin and X amount of reasons to go with a light skin. You can't trust dark skinned niggas or women, and you can't trust light skinned niggas or women, and you cute for a dark skin, you arrogant if you're light skinned. Whatever the case may be, this has been a conversation that's kept us divided for far too long. The lightness of one's skin, and I've said this on another episode in season 1, I'll link that in the description as well. It is the most obscene thing I've ever heard. Because you have a lighter skin tone to me does not mean that I cannot respect you as a black man or black woman, because at the end of the day you are black. No matter what anybody tells you, no matter what everybody says to soup your head up, you are a black person first and foremost. So you can have 20%, well, I can't say that. You can be the lightest of light motherfuckers and still be black, and I'll still treat you the same way I treat everybody else. But that's just me personally. I cannot speak for everybody else. So that's one thing that really is starting to rear its ugly head once again, because even back here in the slave times, you had this constant debate over house Negroes and field Negroes. As darker skinned people were seen as more adequate and more equipped to work out in the fields because of the high levels of melanin that they do possess, that keeps them from burning, quote unquote, in the sun outside. Then you have the lighter skinned Negroes, lighter skinned slaves, who were typically in the house because they favored more of white people than they did with black people, and they were easier on the eyes. They were so much more of an intrigue to white people than just the typical Negro. And you can see the difference of it as you see the lighter skinned slaves be treated more fairer, more with more respect and more regard. At the end of the day, we was all niggas to them, so it don't matter who or what you were, what your skin color looked like, or anything. It's something that they just seen as interest, inadvertently. Now, the last thing he did say is to pitch the female against the male. This is something that I want to really get into the topic of, because you will never, ever see any other race of people pitch one, the male against the female. Because it's just the basics of building the community back up is through unity of the man and the woman for the woman, and the woman and the man and the man, whatever. Whatever your sex preference is, I don't care. Pitching the man against the woman is not about controlling the amount of offspring that they breed. Pitching the man against the woman is about the philosophies that each possess. If you turn a black man against a black woman, their automatic perception of everything changes. Because now he will undermine, disrespect, and berate this black woman to the end of days with no regards about how she feels, and when she is broken down mentally, physically, and emotionally, will discard her to the past, discard her to the left, and leave her never wanting a black man again, and vice versa for black women. This is a toxic thing that really does need to stop, because if we do not stick together, we will always fall down and break apart. And to quote the releaser of slaves, Abraham Lincoln, or whoever said this, I'm not even going to look in. I'll probably look into it later, but really don't care who said it. A house divided shall never stand. I think that's Abe Lincoln. Don't fact check me on that. So, going on to it, we have our first point is the cardinal principles of making a slave. Before I even get into that, let's just break down a couple more different things. So it was the interest and business of slaveholders to study human knowledge, human nature, and the slave nature in particular, to view the practical results. And many of the people, that attain astonishing results in this direction. Fast forward, conscious injustice. No, I'm not going to talk about that. So let's go into how he made slaves. Again, the basis of it is needing a black man, a pregnant black woman, and her baby boy. Second, you use the same principles that we would use for breaking a horse, combined with some more sustaining factors. What we do with break them. What we do with horses is that we break them from one form of life to another, to reduce them from their natural state in nature, whereas nature provides them with the natural capacity to take care of their offspring. We break the natural string of independence from them and therefore create a dependency status, so they may be able to get from them useful production for our business and pleasure. I'm not going to explain that. It's actually self-explanatory. Basically what I just said. 3 factors. Only thing you need, process to work. Black man, pregnant black woman, baby boy. It's crucial for it to be men. Because I'm going to get into that later. Not even going to get into that right now. I'm going to get into that later. But it's crucial that you have 2 men, a boy and a man in this instance, and just 1 woman, because of what they do next. But it was good for business. It's good for business. Disgusting. So, cardinal principles of making a Negro. For the fear that our future generations may not understand the principles of breaking both beasts together, the Negro, because I'm not saying this, and the horse, we understand that short-range planning economics result in a periodic economic chaos, so that we can avoid the turmoil in the economy. It requires for us to have a breadth and depth in long-range comprehensive planning, articulating both skill-sharp perceptions. So, he then goes on to continue that both a horse and a Negro is no good to the economy in its wild and natural state. Both must be broken and tied together for orderly production. For orderly future, special and particular attention must be paid to the female and the youngest offspring. Both must be crossbred to produce a variety of division of labor. Both must be taught to respond to a particular new language. Psychologically and psychological, and physical instructions of containment must be created for both. There are 6 cardinal principles, as truth to be self-evident, based on the following discourse. Based upon the following discourse concerning the economy and breaking this type of horse and Negro together, all inclusions of the 6 principles laid down about. Note, now the principle alone will suffice for a good economy. You must use all of them to employ a orderly good for the nation. Now, accordingly, both a wild horse and a wild or natural Negro is dangerous even if captured, for they have a tendency to seek their customary freedom. In doing so, they may kill you in your sleep, and therefore you cannot rest. They sleep when you are awake, and they awake when you are asleep. Enough said. You must keep the body, but take the mind. Just keep that in mind. Just keep that phrase in mind. You must keep the body, but take the mind. It's a control thing, people. It's a control thing. So when you look back on different things regarding anything in life, it's all about control. And just keep that phrase in mind. In other words, break the will to resist. Now, the breaking process is the same for both the horse and the Negro, only slightly varying degrees. But as we said before, there is an art in long-range economic planning. You must keep, again, this is what they're going to mention it again, you must keep your eye and thoughts on the female and the offspring of the horse and the Negro. A brief discourse in offspring development will shed light on the key sound of economic principles. Pay little attention to the generation of the original breaking, but concentrate on future generations. Therefore, breaking the female, the mother, will breed breaking the offspring. So, you might ask how they do this. So to keep me from reading the rest of this, I'm going to summarize it up the best I can. I'm going to paraphrase. To break a horse and a Negro. 2 totally different things. 2 totally different creatures. One is human, one is an animal. One is a horse. A stallion. So, in other words, what happens is they use black women for they use black men for breeding purpose only and keep the black women. So what they do with the black man is they take one, just one. It's not the strongest, just any random black man. They tie his 5 limbs his 4 limbs to 4 different horses. They set him on fire. They slap each of the horses' ass at the same time and pull him apart, thus killing him. They then, in front of the women and children, beat the rest of the black men to near death, placing a fear of God in them that no one has ever seen. Then, and only then, will they let the black man go after they breed with the women. After they breed with the women. Because that's what happens. You get a horse, get a male stud. You breed him with the female horse. You release him into the wild. You release him back into nature for the next time you do need him, and you will need him. Release him. You make the female docile, and she will make the offspring docile. So people, what all of that just said was, you take the nature of a black man and you turn it against the nature of a black woman. So let me give you a basic principle of what men and women's nature is, just natural part of them. It could change, it could do this, but in the pure essence of a man and a woman, a man is there to provide and protect. Two things. A woman is there to nurture and teach. You pit these two philosophies against each other, and you allow for them to run rampant. But that's another story that's another topic for another day. Next, let's just keep going on. I'm just gonna keep going on that first, because that is really how they did it. That is literally the one way they did it. So back to female versus male. If you pit a woman against a man, the house comes down. Because anybody that knows, a woman is the strongest part of a family. It's not even trying to suck women's clits or be a white knight. But it is true, the woman is the strongest and the backbone of the family. While the man may be the head, and the man may do the providing and the working and all this other stuff, you know, general traditional things. So if you don't like that, hey, whatever. Some people still believe in that. You have the woman who did everything she could to sustain everything as the backbone. So you can have the head, but there's no head without a back. There's no head without a backbone. Can't sustain your own head if you have no backbone. You just be over here like that. Be like a snake at that point. Be guts, skull, no vertebrae. So you take that, you take the principle of protecting and providing, and you pit it against the principle of teaching and nurturing. Now, protecting and providing, those two words in particular are something that is built in to the core of a man, especially when it comes to black men, because generically when you see it, you see black men in a position to protect and provide for his family by any means necessary. So you take that away from him. Then you utilize the nurture and teaching principle built into the woman to teach them to do as they say. So, which leads us into the next point of conversation, is the breaking process of the African woman. The key to everything. Because you can break down a man, but the man will never stop fighting. But if you break down the woman, she can make a man stop fighting. Think about it. Now, it goes on to say that you would take the female and run a series of tests on her to see if she will submit to your desires willingly. Test her in every way because she is the most important factor in good economics. So for anybody, as a woman who does not think they're important to anything, or to think that you're at the bottom of the food chain, you're really not, because anybody knows that women are kind of the backbone of society. You know, shout out to my queens out there. If she shows any signs of resistance in submitting completely to your will, do not hesitate to use the bullwhip on her to exact the last bit of resistance out of her. Take care not to kill her, for in doing so you spoil good economics. Economic. When in complete submission, she will train her offspring in the early years to submit to labor when they become of age. I don't know what it says. Jesus. Understanding is the best thing. Therefore, we shall go deeper in this area of the subject matter concerning what we have produced here in the breaking process of the female Negro. We have reversed the relationship in her natural, uncivilized state. Oh yeah, by the way, we were seen as uncivilized back in the day. Anybody that wasn't European was uncivilized. Really. I'm going to touch on that real quick. If we saw uncivilized, why is it that there were, if I'm not mistaken, at least 5 different wars that broke, 5 different civil wars that broke out in Europe over that next 200-year span? Because you had the war, you had the French Civil War, you had the British Civil War at one point, I do believe. And you had like pretty much everything else breaking down over in that country. But we're uncivilized. We're uncivilized people. Okay. Uncivilized state, she would have a strong dependency on the uncivilized Negro male. And she would have a limited protective tendency towards her independent male offspring and would raise male offspring to be dependent like her. We have reversed the relationship in her natural, uncivilized state. She would have a strong dependency on the uncivilized Negro man, and she would have a limited protective tendency towards her independent male offspring and would raise them to be dependent like her. Nature had provided for this type of balance. We reversed nature by burning and pulling the Negro apart, bullwhipping the others to the point of death, all in her presence. By her being left alone, unprotected, and the male image destroyed, the ordeal caused her to move from her psychological dependent state to be frozen in an independent state. In this frozen psychological state of independence, she will raise her male and female offspring in reverse roles. Goes on to say, for the fear of the young male's life, she will psychologically train him to be mentally weak and dependent, but physically strong. Because she has become psychologically independent, she will train her female offspring to be psychologically independent. But if you've got a Negro woman out front and a Negro male behind and scared. This is a perfect situation of a sound sleep economic. Before the breaking process, we had to be alertly on guard at all times. But we can see soundly. For out of frozen fear, his woman stands guard for us. He cannot get past her early slave molding process. He is a good tool, now ready to be tied to the horse at a tender age. By the time the Negro boy reaches the age of 16, he is soundly broken in and ready for a long life of sound, efficient work and the reproduction of a good unit of labor force. Continually through the breaking uncivilized savage Negroes by throwing the Negro woman savage into a frozen psychological state of independence, by killing the protective male image, and by creating a submissive, dominant mind of a Negro male slave. We've created an orbiting cycle that turns on its own axis forever. Unless the phenomenon occurs and reshifts the position of the male and female slaves, we show what we mean by example. Take the case of 2 economic slave units and examine them closely. That's pretty much self-explanatory. So if anybody, and this is going to be a tricky one, if anybody who got offended by the use of words dependent, at that time, black women were dependent on black men because of black men. Again, protect and provide. Two main focus. So she became dependent on this. So what do? Again, can't have a head without a backbone. You make it so that the woman now views the man as weak. Now feels that she has to do everything. She has to cook, clean, watch for the kids, and keep them from certain death. You break her mentally to take her physically. I'm going to say it again. You break her mentally to take her physically. Keep the mind, leave the body. Keep the mind and leave the body. So, in reversing the roles, and before anybody would say anything, if you have a comment, please let me know. I'm interested in hearing the side of the debate. But in reversing the roles of a black man and a black woman, what you have found is that the black women, in an attempt to make the young black males as safe as possible, get them to be weak mentally and dependent, but physically strong. Good work ethic. So now, I ask you, what do you see now? It's 2019. So what do you see now? You still see a dependent black man latching on to the independent black woman. Whether it's his mom, his wife, his girlfriend, his baby mama, or any other random female that he talks to. Why is that? It's because his mother made him submissive and mentally weak and dependent on everybody. But he's physically strong. Remember, he can protect you and provide certain services for you, but he cannot and will not be independent. People, if you don't know, this is the process that goes on every single day. It is a fear tactic, and it is a control tactic that was used to destroy the black community at every step of the way. You took the black woman. You made her not dependent on the black man. You took the image of the black man, grabbed the lighter, set it on fire, yanked each one of his limbs off, and beat it to the point of death in the presence of the woman. Now, there's no way that she's going to respect the man, the black man. No way. Oh, you think I would respect the black man? You just got your ass beat in front of everybody. You can't take these people. It's like 5 of them. It's 20 of y'all, but it's 5 of them. That's the fear tactic. It's not about how big you are. It's not about how strong you are. It's about the psychological and the mental portion of it all. Now, what do you see also in regards to the females? Women are raising their females to be more independent, which is good. You should raise your women to be more independent and not be dependent on anybody to help themselves out. What you do breed is an independent black woman who would do anything to protect and provide for her family. She has now become the head with no backbone. Head with no backbone. Two things that add up. Can't have a head without a backbone. You sure can't have a backbone without a head. So the dependency just changed from one to another, throwing us in a perpetual cycle, or he said, an orbiting cycle that turns on its own axis forever, unless a phenomenon occurs to reshift the position of the male and female. Again, while we are not slaves, we're not slaves in the traditional sense. We are enslaved to this ideology right now, right here in 2019. Therefore, there is no accurate way to portray any of this without having an argument over it. Just how it is. 300 years ago, this man presented everybody with this miraculous way of controlling slaves. 300 years later, we still fall for the same amount of bullshit that we always have. Fall into the same habits. Fall into the same, discourse. It's really messed up. But that's how it is. Hey, that's how it is. It worked. The last point I want to touch on before I end off the video is the control language they use. Once the crossbreeding is complete, for further severance from their original beginning, we must completely annihilate the mother's tongue of both the new Negro and the new mule, into the new language that involves the new life's work of both. Language is a particular institution. It leads to the heart of people. The more a foreigner knows the language of another country, the more he is able to move through all levels of society. Therefore, if the foreigner is an enemy of the country, to the extent that he knows the body of the language, to the extent that the country is, to that extent is the country vulnerable to attack or invasions of foreign cultures. For example, if you take a slave, if you teach him all about your language, he will know all of your secrets, and he is then no more a slave. For you can't fool him any longer. If you told a slave that he must perform in getting out our crops, and he knows the language well, he would know that our crops didn't mean our crops, and that the slavery system would break. For he would relate on the basis of what our crops really meant. So you have to be careful in setting up the new language for the slave. For the slaves would soon be in your house, talking to you man to man. And that is the death of the economic system. In addition, the definition of words and terms are only a minute part of the process. Values are created and transported by communication through the body language. A total society has many interconnected value systems. All the values of society have bridges of language to connect them in order for them to connect them for orderly working in the society. But for these language bridges, these many values systems will sharply clash and cause internal strife and civil war. The degree of the conflict being determined by the magnitude of the issue and relative opposing strength in whatever form. For example, if you put a slave in a hog pen and train him to live there and incorporate him as a value, or incorporate him to value it as a way of life completely, the biggest problem you would have out of him is that he would worry you about provisions to keep the hog pen clean, and the same hog pen to make a slip and incorporate something in his language whereby he comes to value a house more than he does the hog pen. So, once you do that, once you do everything listed above, everything I just talked about, you then take the language of the people. You take the native tongue of the mother, because the mother's going to teach them in the basic way. So it's basically saying that you give them a multitude. You give them this language, right? You strip that language from them. So every time they say something in African, you whip them. And you make them speak English. Sound familiar? So you make them speak English, and you make them speak English over and over and over again. You give them the ability to speak it but not read it. Because if they read, they understand the concepts of how to break down slavery. If you teach them the language but do not teach them how to read it or write it, they will never understand what you're completely doing to them, and they will always be perpetually at the bottom. It's like you give them something. I'll give you an example. You give them $100. You don't tell them what the $100 is for. You don't tell them what the $100 is. You just give them this money, and you show them what it is that you can do with it. You don't tell them about building or investing or saving. You give them this, and you point them in the direction of the nearest expensive thing. See where I'm going here? Two separate concepts, but of the same token. You teach the Negroes how to speak the language, but you not teach them how to read it. Once they learn how to read it, how else do we control them? You give them an obscene amount of money. You never show them what they can possibly do with this money to grow and to prosper. You just give it to them and tell them have at it. Simple as that. Simple, right? It's simple as that. People, that is the way that they use to control slaves. How to build a slave, how to make a slave, how to sustain slavery for many, many years. Oh man, they seem to think it's a wonderful thing. Seem to think it's a wonderful thing, and I don't understand it. I never understand it. I don't understand how you can sit there and boldly tell me that this is a normal thing. It's a normal occurrence. It's not, people. But anyway, just to summarize all of that, 307 years ago at this point, 307 years ago, we had an instance where the black man and the black woman were pitted against each other in a fight for dominance. You can't say that. 307 years ago, you had a slave come in and describe on how to completely make the black people docile and enslaved for a good amount of 300 years. At this point, it's 300 plus years. Nonetheless, you basically take the female, you make her independent, you make it so that she wants to protect her sons from the atrocities that just happened to the black man. So, long story short, you breed two black people together, one male, one female. Depending on which one the couple have, is how you dictate it. You breed them together. You make them, how they would say. Depending on, and then this is the other part that I didn't mention, but depending on what they have, you get another group. Same situation. Same instance. So if Group A has a black woman, a black girl as a child, and Group B has a black son, the modes shift. They're still kicking the black man out to be out there in the field and not be there with his children. They're still going to have the women teach the child to be docile and dependent and more forgiving, well, not more forgiving, but more appreciative over the slave owners. At that point, the woman will teach the black girl to be independent, not physically, but psychologically and mentally, to the point where she feels as though she needs no one, and she can do everything by herself. On the other hand, you get the black man, the black boy, and the woman, his mother will teach him to be as docile and dependent on her as she is to the slave owner. So you follow me? You get the horse. You beat the shit out of the male horse. Make it so it doesn't want to run away. You take all of its feistiness, its uncivilized nature. You breed it with a woman. Kick the man to the curb. The male horse to the curb. Then you make it so that the woman is eating out of the female horse is eating out of his head. Thus teaching the young horse offspring to do the same. That is the entirety of that letter. It's probably more, but it's all I wanted to cover for today. I think it's going on at least about like an hour. Oh, 50. Yeah, it's about going on an hour, man. We've been in here for an hour. Just me, myself, and I. Today, we're going to be coming back with some more content for you. Coming back with a lot more on later episodes. Again, every Friday. We in here. Just a quick recap of what we discussed. Bring up my notes. We discussed the cardinal principles of making a Negro. Remember the 6 of them. 6 of them. Just want y'all to know that. These include. Wait, where'd they go? 6 principles. Yeah, so they really didn't list it, but there's 6 cardinal principles of making a Negro. We talked about the breaking process of African woman and how that impacts future generations, how that will further impact future generations about the mentality of how everything was. And we talked about the controlling the language, not the control language, but controlling the language output and input of the black people. So people, I gave you all of it. I'll link the PDF in the description below. I'll link everything that I've referenced today in the description below. And thank you so much. If you stuck around for the whole thing, thank you so much, man. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate all my subscribers, all my fans, all my friends, because my friends are my fans. Right now, we're going to be coming back every week, new content. Try to get more people on here. It's not going to be the same voices. You're going to be hearing different voices, different layout. Everything is different in season 2. And it's going to be a progressive thing. It's going to be something that I'll do every time. Every time a new season drops, it's something different. It's not going to be the same as last season. It's going to be some different new topics, new people, maybe a little bit of old topics that we recovering with more evidence and everything. Also, we're going to be doing a lot more. Last season, I said I was going to be doing like daily news. This time, I will attempt to do that. There's a lot that goes on in the black community, so it's going to be a lot to cover, and I just kind of want to cover it slightly, and it may be on a different platform, maybe Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whichever one. Just check all of my postings. I'm going to leave all my socials in the description below, so it's going to be linked on the video, probably at the bottom of the screen there, or up top in the right hand corner, or even at the end of this video. But again, guys, I appreciate it so much, and I will gladly see you guys next time. This is Black Lil Mac with the dreads. No more afro, y'all. They growing. Signing out.